Hello everyone, this is 1.7, the distance formula, which we're also going to introduce the Pythagorean theorem. You have most definitely seen the Pythagorean theorem before. It is a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. What's the most important thing is that you know that the c is your hypotenuse, okay? The distance formula is actually the same formula, but what we're doing is we're solving for c, so we took the square root of the right-hand side, the square root of the left-hand side, and the square root of c squared is just c, that's our hypotenuse, is equal to the square root of a squared plus b squared, which is the change in x's is your a squared, and the change in y's is your b squared. So they're actually the same formula, okay? We use one more when we're working with triangles. We use Pythagorean theorem, and when we actually are using like the coordinates and they give us an x and y axis, x and y value, then we'll use a distance formula. But they're the same thing. So on this next test, we will try to give you graph paper or bring graph paper, and we'll try to give you like little grids. Example 1, it says B is at 1, 3, and C is at, and A is at -2, -1, right? So they give you A and B, and we're trying to find the distance. What is the distance between A, B, right? But we can't actually count the hypotenuse. So let's draw the line that we're trying to do in blue, but we can't actually count those squares because they're diagonals. So what we're going to do is we're going to make another line. Let's make this red, and we're going to make a line. We're going to go from A, and we're going to go all the way to the left until we're right underneath B. Do you see that this is the line that B is over? And then we're going to go straight up to B, okay? And then using the Pythagorean theorem method, we're going to count the units. So we're going to count the units. We're going over from A, we're going to go over 1, 2, 3 units. So my A squared is going to be 3 squared plus, and then my, I'm going to go up how many units? So I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4 units. So that'll be 4 squared. That is my b squared equals, and it always has to be your hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is going to be your biggest side, and it's always opposite that 90-degree angle. So this is my 90-degree angle, and it's pointing towards my hypotenuse. So that is my hypotenuse, the blue line, which we don't know. That's what we're trying to find out, is that distance between A and B. So that's our c squared. Now, we know that 3 squared is 9. We're just going to simplify it. And 4 squared is 16 is equal to c squared. 9 squared plus 16, or sorry, 9 plus 16 is 25. And that is equal to c squared, right? We don't want to know what c squared is. We just want to know c. So what we're going to do, to get rid of that squared, we take the square root of each side, okay? You're going to have to use your calculator sometimes, but this one's pretty nice. The square root of 25 is 5, right? 5 times 5 is 25. So we said that the green one right here was 3. We said the vertical one right here was 4. And then we said, now we know that the blue one right here is 5. This is a 3, 4, 5 triangle. This is very important. We're going to use this triangle a lot. All right. I'm also going to show you how to do this using the distance formula. I want to find the distance between B and A. So I'm going to write it down right here that B is at 1, 3, 1, 3, and A is at -2, -1, right? I want you to write that down right there. And what I am going to do is I'm going to underline my x values first, because that's what we're going to do. We're going to start with the x's. You see this formula? We have x minus x. It really doesn't matter which x value you start with, as long as if you start with the first equation, when you get to the y's, we start with the first equation also. Okay, and I'll show you what that means. So I'm going to underline my x values, which in this case, remember it's always x, y, correct? So it's the first one is always my x. So I'm going to say d equals square root. Doesn't matter which one I start with. I can start with 1. I'm going to start with 1 minus -2. Okay, there's a double negative there because the equation is negative, or says minus, and then the 2 is negative. So I'm just plugging it in, right? Do you guys see that double negative? And then it's squared. It says put a 2 up there, plus parentheses, y minus y. Now, it didn't matter which x I started with, but since I started with 1, I have to start with the corresponding y, which means the same y, which is 3. And then the other y is -1. So I have to start with 3 minus the y value. So the minus is coming from here, right? So minus, and then the y value is -1, and we're also squaring it. So don't forget to square it. All right, and then we'll just simplify this, right? You can plug this whole thing in your calculator. Just remember to use your parentheses. Just plug it all into your calculator exactly how I wrote it in with the parentheses and everything, and it'll give you the right answer. It'll give you 5. So otherwise, we can simplify it. The square root of 1 minus a negative, is a positive. So 1 plus 2 is 3 squared, plus 3 minus a negative, minus negative is a positive. So 3 plus 1 is 4 squared. Does this look familiar? We just did this over here, 3 squared plus 4 squared, right? So I'm just going to simplify it again. D equals square root. 3 squared is 9, plus 4 squared is 16. 9 plus 16 is 25. So D equals the square root of 25. And now we know the square root of 25, we know that is 5. So my distance is equal to 5. So we just did this 2 different ways. In the beginning, this looks a little bit more complicated, but if we do not have a coordinate, a xy axis, the distance formula is going to be our method of choice when we're trying to find the distance between something. Okay. Now, I don't want them to trick you. I want you to understand that distance is the same thing as length right there. So what I want you to do next to distance formula, I want you to write length. This is very important. The length of something and the distance of something is the same thing. So above length right here, I want you to write distance. And we will do this in class every chance we get. Okay, every single time we see length, we're going to write distance. Every single time we see distance, we're going to write length. All right, so the distance between C and D, okay, or the length between CD, what we're going to do is we can plot it. C is at -3, 2, so the x value comes first. We go to the left 3 and then +2. This is C. All right, D is at 4 and -1, so we go to the right 4 and then down 1. This is D. Now, I wanted to show you something like this because we do not have a straight path. We cannot find this length. This is not the easiest length to find, right? This length right here, C to D, is not the easiest to find because they're diagonals. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to count, and we're going to have to go start at C, go down at C until you hit the D line, which looks like it's this line right here at -1. And then you're going to go from that line all the way straight across to the right to D. Okay, and that's how we do this. It has to make a right angle. It has to be a 90-degree angle. Now, I'm going to count how many units down I went. I went down 1, 2, 3 units. I'm going to write a 3. And then I went over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 units. I'm going to write a 7. And then we're trying to find C to D, so that is my C. That is my C, right? So remember the Pythagorean theorem is a squared plus b squared equals c squared, but the hypotenuse, the longest side, has to be our c squared, or our c. So that has to be on the other side by itself. Now I'm going to do this for you. A squared, it doesn't matter if you pick 3 or 7, it doesn't matter. They both will work. So we can say that this is 3 squared, right, plus 7 squared. That doesn't matter. You could have said 7 squared plus 3 squared. That would be the same thing, as long as you set it equal to the hypotenuse squared. That does matter. The hypotenuse has to be on the side by itself. Now, 3 squared we know is 9. 7 squared is 49 equals c squared. 49 plus 9 is 58. And unfortunately, that's not a very good number. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the square root of each side. Since the c is squared, to get rid of it, we take the square root, right? The square root of each side. The square root of 58 is a decimal. You can write down that decimal. I want you guys just to leave it like that. So I want you to write C is equal to the square root of 58. Or the distance is equal to the square root of 58. Okay, so we've practiced the Pythagorean theorem. I think you guys pretty much know how to do that. Now I'm going to practice the distance formula. Okay, so you guys take your choice. If you want to use a distance formula each time, you may. If you want to use the Pythagorean theorem each time, you may. Okay, I'm still going to help you plot it this time. I want you guys to start plotting it by yourself. So I'm going to go, W is at 7, 4, so that means I go to the right 7 since it's positive, and then up 4. And then X is at -1, -4, so that means I go to the left 1, and then I go down 4. If you're getting confused, make sure you're marking these axes. X is right there, and then Y is right here, okay? So this is X right here, and then W. I made blue. Let me just write it in. And I'm really trying to find the distance in between them, which I'm going to make black. What distance is this in between these two? All right, well, like I said, you can use the Pythagorean theorem, but this time I'm going to use a distance formula. What I want you guys to do is write it down. You can write it in the corner somewhere. I don't have room really, so I'm going to say D equals. Get used to this formula. So I'm going to write X minus X squared plus Y minus Y squared, right? Now, I need you guys to help me out. Underline your X's once, and then underline your Y values twice, okay? And I want you guys to do that. So show me that you did this. I'm going to check this on your paper. Underline your X values once, like I did, and then underline your Y values twice, okay? So D equals the square root of 7 minus -1, or you can start with 1 and then minus 7. Okay, it's up to you, or -1 minus 7. It's up to you. So I'm just going to start with the 7. I'm putting a minus because the equation asked for a minus. And now it asks for a -1. That's why I have the -1 squared, right? And then in between them, there's a plus. The Y value, since I started with 4, with 7, I have to start with the positive 4. Okay, I have to start with the same Y value. So I'm going to say 4 minus -4 and square it. I want you to plug this into your calculator and tell me what you get. Pause it, try it yourself, and then come back. All right, guys, so I hope that you tried this. And what we're going to do is we're going to say, well, 7 minus a -1 squared is actually 8 squared, right? Which is 64 plus 64, because 4 minus a -4, that is 8 squared also. So that's also 64. And that's actually just the square root of 128 if you add them together. Or if you plug the whole thing from the very beginning into your calculator, you got 11.3137, which is actually perfect. So 11.3 is perfect. That's rounding it. That's fine. Alrighty, guys, flip your paper over to the next side. All right, guys, I'm going to help you guys do this problem, and then I want you guys to do the last two by yourselves. Number 1, I want you guys to use the Pythagorean theorem. So I'm going to check to make sure you did this. Number 1, I want you to use the Pythagorean theorem, and then number 2, I want you to use the distance formula, okay? The distance formula. All right, now let's go over this. It says, this is one long problem. If you were to put Fairfax County on a map, you live at coordinates -5, 7. So I'm going to look at -5. -5 is our x value, up 7. And this is my home. This is where we live, right? My home, okay? And your best friend lives at 3, -2. So +3, -2. This is our best friend. We'll write this one as F. All right, plot and label your houses on the coordinate plane. Check, did that, awesome. And then it says you are going to fly, that's so cool, to your best friend's house. How far would you fly if each box is a mile? So it's perfect. They didn't make it hard for us. They just said, what's the distance if each one is a mile, which at the end we know our units are miles. That was a really sloppy line. But we're going straight from H to F, so draw a diagonal line straight from H to F. Maybe use your ruler. You can do better than me. Use graph paper and the Pythagorean theorem. Pretty cool. All right. So we're going to start with H. We're going to go down. We're going to keep doing the exact same thing. I start with the leftmost point. I go straight down or up until I get to the right point. So I'm going to go straight down until I'm at the line with the F. It looks like I am now on the line with the F. And then I'm going to go straight to the right until I land to the F, right? And this is my 90-degree angle. Now I'm going to count my units. How many units down did I go? So I went down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 units. So there's 9. And then I went to the right. How many units? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 units, right? So this is going to be our a squared and b squared. But remember, the distance, the hypotenuse, the longest side is going to be our c squared. So this one right here, h to f, this one right here is going to be our c, right? So I'm going to plug it, I'm going to write down the formula for you guys again. It's a squared plus b squared equals c squared. It doesn't matter which one you make your a and your b. You can have 9 squared plus 8 squared. I'm going to flip it. I'm going to say, well, this is 8 squared plus 9 squared equals, we don't know what c squared is. That's our question. So that's going to be stay c squared. All right, 8 squared, we know is 64. So we have 64 plus 81 equals c squared. Now we're going to add that together, and I'm going to simplify this. 64 plus 81 is something with a 5, 145, and that's going to be equal c squared. And then what we're going to do, since we have c squared, to get rid of it, remember we always take the square root. So the square root of 145 and the square root of c squared, and that way the square root and the squared, they cancel, right? And we're going to have c is equal to the square root of 145. You can leave it like that, square root of 145. We should simplify it if we can, or it's about 12.04, right? So c is around, kind of, this means kind of, 12.04, something like that, right? Cool. All right, guys, if you want to meet at Sweet Frog, which is halfway between your house and your friend's house, where would that be located? Okay, well, first of all, what I wanted you guys to notice is for B, I didn't finish it. It's going to be the distance between my house and my friend's house is going to be about 12.4 or 04 miles. Don't forget the word miles next to it, okay? It says that we're working on miles. All right, now it says, what is the midpoint? So I'm going to go back up. I want to show you this. We can actually like count the diagonals, which one is directly in the middle, about right here. If it's a decimal, that's not nice, right? But I showed you the midpoint formula. So I'm going to write down the midpoint formula for you guys again. Write it down. The midpoint formula is x plus x divided by 2, comma, y plus y divided by 2. And don't forget to use those parentheses. These are very important. I noticed when you guys put in the answer, you did not use your parentheses, which is a coordinate, so we need them. It's very important. Now, I need my 2 coordinates, which is -5, 7, and 3, -2, okay? So -5, comma 7, I'm going to write it down, -5, comma 7, this is my home, so we just put an H next to it, kind of attached to it. And then my friend's house, which I'll make black, this is my friend's house, is at +3, comma -2, so +3, oh my gosh, my computer's just like keeps on going down. Sorry guys, probably I'm going too fast for it. So +3, comma -2, right? And now we're going to underline our x values. I always do this for you first. Your x values are your first 2, right? And it doesn't matter which one you start with. You can start with -5, plus 3, divide that by 2, comma, then you're going to do your y values, which are the second 2. So if I started with -5, I'm going to start with 7 plus -2 divided by 2. Alrighty, now -5 plus 3 is actually -2. So I'm going to bring this right here. We have -2 divided by 2, right? Parentheses, and then a comma. 7 plus -2 is the same thing as 7 minus 2, which is 5. 5 over 2, I kind of gave this to you before. I think these were the same coordinates on one of our quizzes, or very similar. So -2 divided by 2, anything divided by itself is 1, but we do have a negative right here. So our answer is going to be 1, comma, just leave that 5 over 2 there. You can also put 2.5 if you would like. I like the fractions. So 5 over 2 is our answer. So 1, comma, 5 over 2 is our answer. Midpoint will have 2 coordinates, x coordinate and y coordinate. Don't forget the negative. Don't forget it. Good. All right, so -1, comma, 5 over 2. Good. Now, I told you guys I want you to try these two using the distance formula and Pythagorean theorem. So number 2, I want you to use the distance, and number 1, I want you to use the Pythagorean theorem, this one, okay? A squared plus b squared equals c squared, and then you will be done with your homework. Thank you guys. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow in class.